Over the past almost 2 years, wow. And I guess technically even before that, I've been working on a show. Um, what I would like to do with this channel more than anything else is to put up some more Halloween stuff, do some Child's Play stuff, some more Scream content as well. And then after making more, content of those three different series, you get the Halloween movie, after I post multiple clips of it and just kind of like show works being done on it. And then also the show. And then that would kind of be like I don't want to say I'd retire after that, but that would ideally be the evolution of just me making content where it's more like long form stuff than just, oh, I'm sitting here talking in front of a picture. But just to give some ideas relating to this series, I would best describe it as something of a passing of the torch where you have this pair of siblings separated by 12 years. One is in their 20s, or, and the other one's like probably, 6, 7, 8. And they both have powers. The older sibling is very experienced, had him for a long time, really knows what he's doing. But even in being experienced, he still seeks the counsel and guidance of his grandparents, who are his surrogate parents, or like, they are effectively his mother and father in lieu of the actual parents just being, no shows. And, he in turn is something of a more paternal figure towards his younger sibling than brother, even if he is his brother, where he very much is in this kind of parental role and treats him in a way that is equivalent to how someone would treat their child. And the younger brother looks up to his older brother, wants to do things like him, be like him. And I guess what I like so much about this story is that you would really see an arc here with the younger brother at the start. I wouldn't call him weak. He certainly has some understanding of, his abilities. He can fly, he can use the various moves that he's been taught by his different, mentors. There's also the best friend character, and then this surrogate mother figure for the little brother who used to be enemies with her, with his older sibling. But the idea is that he would, even in being someone who is, stronger than the average person, need the guidance of those older people. He would need to be shown how to properly use his powers and push them to new heights by other people with powers, while also needing the grandparents, just for the sake of having, again, guidance and, really someone to kind of bring him more down to earth in terms of just making him, humanizing him, I should say. Now, where I have struggled in terms of writing, because I wrote the first episode over a year ago and I really liked it. It sets up, I'd say, a season of about, I had 16 episodes in mind. It could be more, could be less. I had plotted, just kind of, whenever I write a season of something, I always know how it's going to start, like first episode, and how it's going to end. And then getting there is where we have the issues and the, never ending series of rewrites. But the main influence behind this story, and of course, I'm not going to pretend I'm some original person who just comes up with all of these very unique ideas. I read and observe different things all the time, and I pull stuff from here, pull stuff from there. I don't shy away from what influences me. But the main story that influenced me with regard to writing this season was the original Stan Lee, Steve Ditko Spider-Man run of about 30, I believe 38 issues. Because in this 3-year period, those two were able to introduce almost every single iconic Spider-Man villain which has endured over the last 60 years. Off the top of my head, the only ones who didn't show up in that first, almost 40 issues of TASM were Kingpin, Shocker, and then, like the very obvious later editions of Venom and Carnage. Um, what I like so much about that run and rereading it was just, here's this issue. Here's the villain who has this kind of like iconic or very, memorable design, even if they have some power that you've seen before. And here's their origin on these like 2 pages. And then here's how, Spider-Man might struggle against them, but then he eventually figures out how to do it. And I even if, someone could look at that and say it's formulaic, but what sticks out to me so much about, again, that run was that you would have, what's the way of putting it? You would have a story that, even if a character only shows up one time, and this would not be the case with any of the villains I would make. They all have multiple appearances. You would still have an idea of like who they were, what their powers were. You would walk away, at least, even if it's a one-off, and they usually were not, having some sense of what they are. And for me, the issue has been that in writing this season, I would say, a main villain, and then I have about 2, 3, 4 other antagonists that are just locked in step. And what I would love more than anything else is that, again, I said the season would be 16 episodes. That was the number I had before. It could change, when we'll get into that a little bit later. I really wanted to have, in this first season, at least half a dozen villains, like 6 or 7 at least, which would basically be one every other episode. But as I've been writing it, I keep saying to myself, why should I introduce this one-off antagonist who, I could use again later on, theoretically, if I can just keep building up that main villain, right? Why make an episode where they fight somebody else when you just have him, lurking in the shadows? And really, I just have to keep reminding myself that, in serialized stories, you can have breathers. You can, kind of deviate from the overarching narrative. And it's not a bad thing to just have other threats, just kind of like looming and out there. And it really, just stuff like that's more immersive. Not everything has to tie into some grander tale or, set of incidents. But the other problem I ran into is that one of the things, again, the Lee and Ditko run did well was give Peter a lot of characterization and just have it to where he always had to think on his feet. And with the way I've structured the plot, I kind of flip back and forth between, with the older brother character, not really wanting him to be the one that like defeats every villain every episode, because I want to show that the group of him and his grandparents and the little brother and the best friend and the former enemy turned friend, is that with this group, even if one of them let's say is out doing something, or 2 of them are out doing something, if the ones that are there band together, they can take out the occasional threat by itself. The main villain's, whole, like, one of the reasons he's really threatening is that he's pretty good at like getting other villains to work with him and having an underling, and just, but when you fight him, you basically end up fighting another 2 people. So if you're not in a group, you could just end up getting, ganged up on, and that's probably not going to end well. But yeah, that run, along with, I'd say, the Chris Claremont X-Men run is another example. I just have to keep, just trying. And I really like the premise here. I'm not going to say it's some amazing story, some great, terrific tale of, something that people have never seen ever. But I think it's the kind of series where payoffs are actually like rewarded. Like, watching it from start to finish is something that allows you to kind of track different ideas that are set up and come back to be resolved, and to some degree or another. And I guess to me, it more so represents a lot of the themes just I've had in real life for the past several years, where I mentioned this in the why did I disappear video, but I truly I don't mince words when and I'm not again attempting to get sympathy here, but just the kind of this will be more apparent if I do the first episode because it really kind of shows what my general belief system is. But I really maintain the belief that my future is behind me. It doesn't mean you'll never do anything you enjoy ever again or whatever, but just that I have no reason to believe that a lot of the things I would like to see happen are going to happen, and that because of just the nature of people and the kind of like, oh, you have to keep believing that kind of stuff, where they don't really want to talk about the specifics of why someone feels the way that they do. I'd rather just, for the most part, not even really say anything about it usually. But I think the series is a good indicator of that, because that's one of the ideas behind having the older brother character, not just hog the spotlight, and being me having this very conscious desire, if this goes on long enough, for him to retire, which is not akin to just, oh, he's written out a story and you'll never see him again. It's more so, hey, he can just go and maybe he gets involved every now and again, but if it's some really huge massive event, but hey, he had his time, he did what he was supposed to do. And that's because I've been thinking more again about these different revivals, different shows that are getting resurrected, and I really have been more appreciative of endings when I've seen some of the stuff I've liked just go on for too long. It's really made me regret that it even went on for the duration it had. And that's why I said this is something where, as long as it can get 2 seasons, I would be satisfied. Again, there's some stuff I'd like to do more of if I go past that, but this is just a general rough draft in terms of the ideas. With regard to genre, it's the kind of thing where there's some swearing. I'd say like it's, I don't want to say TVY7. I'm still thinking of TV. It's what it's no darker than most of the stuff you see people post on here. There's cursing, there's different displays of violence, but I don't really think it's any worse than what again you see in a lot of these different superhero movies. Yeah, I've really been practicing. Like, I draw every day. I've really practiced for both this and the Halloween movie. My weak spots as an artist have always been backgrounds and vehicles, and I've been working on those more often. I'm going for a more realistic art style, and with that, the issue always is when you make images, like certain appearances, smaller, trying to retain the details while also being able to shrink it down, and that's what I'm trying to do too. But yeah, so far I like the first few scripts I wrote. The issue again came into the idea of, is 16 episodes enough? They're all about half an hour long, like 22 minutes. And then I said, okay, maybe I could do like Showtime and have seasons that are 12 episodes long, but they're all an hour or 50 minutes. So I was like, man, that's going to be... The issue again is like this. If I had every season where there's a different main villain, just each season has a different main villain, even if you were to say that's formulaic, as long as I can choose to make the season shorter or longer based on however much time it takes to make the whole story, I wouldn't feel that it was like, if I'm set with, okay, every season's 12 episodes. Well, hell, I know whoever the villain is going to be dead in 12 episodes. But if I make the first villain, it takes a whole season of 16 to defeat him, and the next villain takes 30 or 40 episodes, then it's more of like, oh, how far is this going to go? How much is this going to drag out? Because I just think boxing myself in this confined number is not conducive to actually being able to tell the story I'd like to. And hopefully, as the year progresses, we're about halfway through. I'll put up some more uploads because I work on a lot of stuff just in the background. I'm thinking of I have about 3 different Halloween videos I want to do. In general, I'd like to put up some more drawings just to again show I'm practicing stuff, different clips from things I'm making. I've just really been swamped with real life obligations and nonsense. Not trying to make any excuses, but I think about this site a lot. Just I'm trying to get in the habit of uploading more often, because I do think, like, even when I have self-doubt, and I guess we can wrap this up with this, even when I'm not entirely convinced I can make something that is great or amazing, most stuff I do, I still feel has some kind of value to it. Like with most of the shows, movies I like, I criticize them. I say, I think this character could have been used more. I think this could have been done differently. And that's not to say that it's bad or that I'm a better writer than the people that wrote it. It's quite the contrary. I look for just to like analyze or explore, right, the possibility of telling a story in a different way, because I think that as someone who also wants to write, it's beneficial for me to be able to make to be able to articulate why this is not the way I think it should be and how I think it would be better if it were this other way. And even as I've been writing this, I said, okay, by episode 3, this character, they have these many lines. Because I'm trying to, within my own, season, I've got about, I'd say probably 12 characters who appear in every episode, or at least most of the episodes. And, I'm trying to make sure that each one of them has at least a single episode where they're kind of like in the spotlight, getting their characterization. Again, with the idea that after, and this is where that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko Spider-Man run comes back, where if the idea is if you do a season 2 after you've already done your first season where you introduce like 20 characters, by the time you get to the second season, you might introduce maybe 5, 6, because as the longer this goes, the shorter the number that you introduce per season gets smaller, because season 1 had already did put in the hard work. It was the foundation. It introduced 60 or 70% of all the villains that are going to be in this show, from whether it's 2 seasons or 20. It's been interesting to write it. It really has. And I hope that over the next couple of weeks and months, I take more steps towards actually drawing this stuff more often, and trying to animate it. But we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not going to make any promises of due dates, because I did that in the past and lived to regret it. But this is just to say that I've got about 5 types of videos I'd like to do, right? Again, different stuff with Halloween, Scream, and Chucky, and then the Halloween movie, and then this. And I think that's that gives me excitement for at least for the channel in the immediate years.